biochar in general, as a kind of like technology, has delivered about 87% of all the voluntary carbon market removals that have been delivered to date. So it is a very, very powerful solution that we can start deploying today. And there will be other solutions coming online, maybe in 5 years, maybe in a decade and so forth. And we need all of these solutions. But this one is here today, and we're ready to start scaling. The atmosphere has too much carbon, and we're adding too much carbon to it. So two things need to happen in parallel. One is that the emissions get rapidly decreased, I think in the order of 10%-ish per year to get to net zero. And at the same time, we need to ramp up carbon removal capacity so that those hard to abate emissions from, for example, aviation or heavy industry or others can then be physically removed from the atmosphere so that we're actually at net zero.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. And in today's episode, it's with I'm delighted to welcome Henrietta Moon, CEO and co-founder of Carbo Culture.
Great.
Podcast. Now, Carbo Culture, a climate technology company, very passionately building a rapidly scalable biochar carbon removal solution. I've known Henrietta for a while. I've had to really convince her and beg her to come on the show. So Henrietta, thanks a lot for coming on today and giving me your time. I know you're always busy flying around the world actively as an active CEO. So great to see you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Simon. Super great to be here today and excited to talk about Carbo Culture and the mission and everything.
Great. So, maybe before we get into the Carbo, I suppose as you sit here today, what do you think have been the main, for you, the main influences that have led you to this point?
I guess it's hard to put them all in a few sentences, but I'm Finnish by origin, and I was a scout as a child, and even outside of that, spent a lot of time outside in nature and at the cottage and scraping my knees on rocks and so forth. So I was always really outdoorsy, I'd say, and also was sailing with the scouts and stuff like that, and actually saw the deterioration of the Baltic Sea and some of our environment. So really kind of passionate to keep what's good, around for the next generation as well. And in addition to that, I think I've always been surrounded by strong women. My aunt sold a mobile phone company to Nokia when I was a child, and all sorts of, things that I had matriarchs and leaders around me. So it was kind of easy to think, why not,
A little bit combination there. I mean, the, entrepreneurialism and the climate. Were you always destined for this, do you think, when you look back and think of the journey?
Yeah, not at all. I thought that I was, headed for, which was kind of interesting, and I mean, still is given the current topics. But I was sort of on an international relations track, and sort of more. I did all the model UNs and EUs and all these kinds of things, and eventually interned at the foreign ministry of Finland, and brought in some exciting guests to our office. Both on state level and press guests and so forth. But actually, that was a sort of false visibility into the world of bureaucracy. So it wasn't really, I'm too impatient for that sort of careers. And and quickly came across this group in Aalto University, which was Aalto Entrepreneurship Society. And it was a bunch of friends who were bringing a Stanford professor to Helsinki to sort of lecture on startups, and I quickly had the Kool-Aid as well, and other entrepreneurs especially in the tech sector, sort of doing amazing things, and the crew around me and sort of everything inspired us to. It wasn't like a super thought through process, but we just started doing things, whether they were events or companies. We just kind of gave things a go and kind of learned while building, and that felt like the right tool for me personally.
Okay, excellent. Because I was going to say the Finnish ecosystem, right? I mean, entrepreneurialism, startups. What was that like, or did it exist? Yeah,
I mean, early days. About a decade ago, the gaming scene was really strong in Finland always, and the backbone of the internet was built in Finland in many ways, like Linux and SSH and IRC and all these things were kind of existing, but they were very, very deep underground in nerd caverns, and so the kind of like mainstream culture was not there. The business newspaper editor did not know what a startup was, kind of thing. And from there, today, I think the Nordics has the highest amount of unicorns per capita. Obviously, small countries and a lot of people doing stuff. So that's a good thing. But definitely, I mean, it's a thriving ecosystem with a lot of success, a lot of second, third time entrepreneurs coming back into the ring and funding others and giving others connections and all that. So it's a completely different story today, and it's been wonderful to see that happening and be a part of it.
Yeah, great. So tell us, just before we chat about Carbo, like just some context around where you met your co-founder and where the idea kind of came from. Yeah, let's just think back to those days.
Yeah. So I got drafted into this program at NASA called Singularity University about 10 years ago. It was very cool back then, and it was like a program of 80 people from around the world, from about 36 different nationalities who got brought into the Moffett Field Base. And we were sort of locked in there for 3 months to work on like wicked problems or some of these global grand challenges. And you can imagine what they are, like energy, poverty, security, water, food, and so forth. And climate was obviously one of these themes. And that's where I connected to Christopher Carstens, who's my co-founder, native Californian, but in any case, tall, loud carbon engineer who had looked at a bunch of the solutions for the space and worked on some of them. And he was convinced that sort of biocarbons are an elegant form of carbon removal and should be done. And so we connected in the program out there. At the time, we were both running, other companies. So we went back to sort of like hand those over, and the time was definitely not right for Carbo Culture back then. But then fast forward 5 years, and I kind of couldn't let it go and had to start the company. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you actually started, am I right? It was about 2016, right?
Yeah, late 2016, we applied for a challenge, which we didn't get into, but in any case, that kickstarted the company.
Amazing. Okay, it's been some journey. So tell us a little bit about Carbo Culture, particularly around, what problems you're solving.
The climate is warming, and we have a problem of stocks and flows. So the atmosphere has too much carbon, and we're adding too much carbon to it. So two things need to happen in parallel. One is that the emissions get rapidly, decreased, I think in the order of 10% per year to get to net zero. And at the same time, we need to ramp up carbon removal capacity so that those hard to abate emissions from, for example, aviation or heavy industry or others can then be physically removed from the atmosphere so that we're actually at net zero. And this is to have a fighting chance for 1.5 or even 2 degree at this point, because, and I'm not giving up on 1.5, but in any case, for either of those outcomes, it's imperative that we do both of these as fast as possible. And obviously, the implications of not getting there would be dramatic in terms of food security, in terms of, human survival and all sorts of things. And we don't want to really go to those tipping points. So let's say like 1.5 is the target and 2 is the backstop, and we need carbon removal in all these scenarios. And so Carbo Culture is doing carbon removal, and we're doing it in a energy positive way. So we're not loading more on the grid. We actually help the grid go greener, or help the entire energy sector go greener, not actually the grid at this point. And basically, during the process where we convert waste biomass into these biocarbons or biochar, we have a huge amount of excess heat in the form of syngas that we commercialize into district heating. So it's an energy positive way of doing carbon removal. And today we're at industrial scale. So we have our industrial scale pilot operating. We're not at commercial scale yet, but in any case, industry standard engineering and all all that, and we've come a long way in innovation from university laboratories.
Yeah, brilliant. So tell us a little bit around the technologies that are really powering the company.
The technology was originally researched in a university setting for over a decade in the US. And from there, we've taken an exclusive license and started really developing the technology for a more commercial application. And since then, we've also filed IP of our own. But essentially, it's a way to take biomass to an ultra high temperature. So things like walnut shells or peach pits or wood chips to above 700 Celsius, where the carbon is transformed into an inertinite form, which is just kind of like a mineral almost. It can be stable on a geological time frame. So millions of half-life of 1,000,000 years is on our materials and such in high temperatures. And so basically, you make sure that the carbon is out of the atmosphere and out of the carbon cycle for that long, and hence it's carbon removal. And because it's an energy positive way of doing it, it is actually a scalable solution today. And biochar in general, as a kind of like technology, has delivered about 87% of all the voluntary carbon market removals that have been delivered to date. So it is a very, very powerful solution that we can start deploying today. And there will be other solutions coming online, maybe in 5 years, maybe in a decade and so forth. And we need all of these solutions. But this one is here today, and we're ready to start scaling.
Amazing. So tell me, great to learn a little bit about this. So this particular biomass, essentially, I'm right in thinking it would release carbon back into the kind of atmosphere. So what you do is, by heating it up, you stop that process happening.
Yeah, exactly. So the way to think about it, I guess the carbon cycle, it happens naturally every year, and nature actually draws down hundreds of billions of tons of CO2 and puts it in biomass. But if you imagine, like in the autumn, the leaves drop down and decompose quickly. So carbon system in itself is in balance. Now we can hack it and take away some of that carbon that the plants draw down for us. So instead of using fans that need a huge amount of energy for the conversion, we use plants that use solar power and work around the world. And so there's about 1 billion tons of excess biomass now, in questionable easiness of access. But in any case, our chosen biomasses are industrial waste streams. So food processing, industrial processes, and forestry waste. So we can literally, utilize something that would otherwise end up in a boiler or on the field or somewhere.
Yeah, so 1 billion tons of this biomass.
Yeah, that was an estimate in Nature. I'm sure there's newer ones from some years ago, but the potential of biochar is seen to be somewhere between 2 to 6 gigatons of CO2 removal, which is actually like more than 1 billion tons of biomass. But that means that would be up to half of all the carbon removal necessary by 2050. So it is a very powerful tool and one that can't be foregone in the toolkit that we need.
Absolutely. So tell me about the vision of, where carbo culture is going to go.
Our North Star is to get to a gigaton of CO2 removal, which would be 1 billion tons. And now in the next decades, really, or let's say this decade, we're going to deploy portfolios of projects across the EU and the US to get to millions of tons to start off with. And that's really taking all of the learnings from the fastest industries that have seen amazing results in, a third of the time expected, which is solar and wind, of course, who have gone for the modularity and the easy deployability of these systems and really gotten the kilowatt hour price down and the scale up. So essentially what we want to build is a modular but industrial scale solution for rapid deployment already this decade. And Carbo Culture, otherwise, our overarching mission is to make real impact for the climate. And if you look at those graphs where it's like one bar is all of the carbon that's needed to be reduced in emissions, and then the next bar is the removals. Now, if we don't reduce the carbon, we will have to ramp up the removals. So kind of like Carbo Culture can reduce these industrial energy emissions by decarbonizing these operations, by selling the energy back to the industrials, and then do the removals at the same time when the biochar is sold to soil, and so really sequestered for millions of years. We just feel that whatever is real climate impact, we want to be doing that, and we want to be one of the enablers in this transition.
Absolutely. So just tell me a little bit about where you are on the journey today. You mentioned about the coming online with your first kind of demo facility. Talk to us about about that and where you take it from there.
So we have two demo pilots in California, R1 and R2, which are small scale pilots where we've done the majority of the work on the actual scale up of the technology and the reliability. And now R3 that we just opened in August is an industrial scale unit, which is fully autonomous and built to industrial spec and industrial standards. So really kind of showcasing what the commercial facility would be. We would just add more modules to the commercial facility. And we don't need to scale up the technology anymore. We've done 8 times and a 4 times scale up already. And now we're happy with the scale where we are. And now we just keep on adding modules to increase the scale of the systems. So R3 is deployed in Helsinki. It's in commissioning and running. And so by the end of the year, our engineers are going to start working on the first commercial facility, which will then be a 20,000 ton per year unit, meaning 20,000 tons of CO2 removal annually. And that'll be a pretty good size already. And that's kind of like the smaller version of the sizes that we'll start deploying then.
Great. How long does it take to actually deploy from when you think about getting that up and running? And
yeah, depends where you start counting, right? But let's say if your business development is done and all that, it takes about 18 months to have it in commissioning if you're very good. And probably for the first one, it will take us, unfortunately, 24 months. Yeah.
Absolutely. And who pays for it then? Because obviously it sounds like it's quite I know it's modular, but it still sounds quite expensive to deploy, right? And then it's, I suppose, complex in terms of the partners that you may deploy with. So just chat through the business model and how you see that working.
In the business development and the co-location, there's 100 things to take into account, but we have to have the partnership with the industrial units. So really land rights, biomass, the energy offtake, all of that kind of wrapped into one. And then on the other side, the revenue streams are the CO2 removal credits, the biochar itself, and the energy. And so kind of like looking at all those is the project Goldilocks zone. And why we're really suited for this industrial co-location is the reliability of our technology. So we have excellent uptime, which is really, really interesting, of course, for co-locating for our industrial partners, and also a fairly small footprint. So that, in addition to the energy generation, is really, really interesting to them.
Absolutely. And just tell me, I read so much about this carbon credits and the marketplace for it. What is that like, and how do you see that developing?
Right now, we're in the voluntary market, and we do expect the US, UK, and Canada to probably have some sort of a, whether regulated or not, but some sort of a carbon standard within this decade already, latest by 2040 when the ETS is starting to go towards zero. So then removal should enter the regulated market as well. But today in the voluntary market, we're able to do offtake contracts of, say, 5 years and onwards, and pushing for 10 to 15. So quite robust, bankable offtake contracts already starting to show, of course, with a little bit of spot markets and so forth. But we're looking to also build the carbon credit into and I mean, biochar is in a great place for this. It's like a very tangible, real asset. And we do life cycle assessments, we do audits, there's production data, you can weigh the carbon, you can send it to a laboratory, it's safe to handle, the carbon doesn't escape anywhere. And so there's a lot of good things going for biochar carbon credits, and people will really see the sort of realness of it, or the reliability of it, and therefore it's been fairly easy to commercialize the credits.
Yeah, great. And also the biochar, that's separate though as well, because you've got the credits on one side, but then you've still got the actual biochar itself, right? So,
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the value from that.
Yeah, the biochar market is fairly early still, and there is, vast amounts of offtake opportunity in the form of soil products and fertilizer products going into the ground. And so biochar should, if there was a vision that I had to say, it would probably be that biochar be included in all of those products in a small percentage everywhere. And that would really help us bring the resiliency of the soils up by holding on to water and nutrients. And so not just, doing the carbon removal aspect, but actually getting ready for the sort of like a little bit of adaptation on the side as well. And another cool thing about the biochar is that it can help hold on to those nutrients both in water leaching and air leaching. So really you can start limiting some of the pollution from those nutrients going into the ground. It still needs to be tested, but rule of thumb with some of the greenhouse gases are up to half of mitigation potential there. So really, really good results showing there as well. I think for Carbo Culture, the next years are really turning the biochar product into a really trustworthy product for customers as well, so that we can start, creating that trust and understanding of the biochar product, but also sort of leading with that kind of a reputation, and really, really highly focused on the quality. And then alongside pushing the production, the cost down and the production volumes up, so that we can access larger clients who then, again, come to the fact that, okay, are we going to see this material being produced at scale with the same quality coming out every year and so forth. So really we're not far off that with already ability to do quite large tests with clients. And so next is really contracting for multi-year contracts. But lots of work to be done there. But luckily we have a fantastic team who are now getting into gear this quarter, and really excited to see what they do in the market.
No, fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the team and the culture. What's it like to work at Carbo Culture?
I hope it's great. I think we have a really kind of we believe in people a lot. And that means that we also want to give them quite a lot of responsibility. I have inherent faith in people being able to pull stuff together and get real stuff done if they're given space. And we definitely don't have, heavy top-down management or anything. Like people see what needs to be done, and then they find the best way to execute on it. And I like independent teams, people who can do decisions on the ground. They don't have to, escalate every decision or something like this. We just we have laser focused targets in terms of what we want to do in the next years, and everybody needs to find their place there. And we're very lucky to have excellent talents. Like our VP of engineering is from ex-GE Global Head of Power, and some of the other people on the team have startup and corporate experience and experience in building stuff off the ground and so forth. So everybody is kind of just itching to get stuff done and make things happen. And so that's kind of maybe the culture that we have. So everybody working together, but still fairly independently. And that's what I want our leaders to be as well. I want to give space and all the support that I can, but actually the leadership team is a bunch of amazing people who I just feel lucky to work with. And so that's kind of the feeling that I want to foster as well.
Amazing. Yeah. How many people in the company at the moment?
We're 30 people now, and we're shortly closing our Series A, and then we'll start another hiring sprint. I want to keep the head count moderate, so not go too crazy, but there are some key roles that we will be hiring for. And of course, with our strategy, we do need some more hands on deck. So always new hires needed.
Absolutely. And are you finding people attracted they want to come and work with you to be part of the decarbonisation story. Is that the big pull? Is that the common thread of everyone that works there?
Absolutely. I mean, people just want to do something real, and they see the climate emergency and they see what needs to happen. And it can be quite frustrating being in organizations where you just don't see the output really leading to real change. And so I think that's the leading factor, besides perhaps a earlier stage, huge opportunity, kind of like an entirely new market, which is sort of like, I don't know how to describe it, like early days of maybe .com or something, but this is like .carbon. So really we have to kind of like innovate on this global carbon management system that's not in place yet. And all of this needs to happen within 2 decades. So it's really, really exciting and tangible. And in addition to that, people can see that, look, this is the size of an organization where I can actually put my skills to the test and really do like personal impact. It's not just like one in thousands of people, but in fact, really be leading some of those changes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you find operating? Because, you've got people and you've got teams in the US, London, Finland. It's a very international company. And I'm just wondering your take on that. Working for a small company, a startup, you find what are the challenges, the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, we've really embraced this culture of sort of like, we have pods and we have meetings with team members face to face where we set strategy or, do a crunch or just a retreat for everybody to kind of build that web of cohesiveness. But really, engineers are on the ground right now at our site. Soon they'll be offsite as well and hand over to operators. But in any case, like, sure, engineering needs to happen largely in person. But this team actually were in place in key markets. London, Zurich, and New York are super key for us. And it's actually works really nicely to be a little bit across the board. But leadership team is centered around a couple of time zones from London. So that makes it easier for meeting up, for communications and so forth. And seems like people like it. People like to meet up here and there to make sure we're on the same page. And, if it's needed, start a sort of panic room for a week here and there. But otherwise, it's actually quite productive also to be able to focus on work.
And just tell me a little bit about that journey for you, right? It's like 7-year journey, 7 years and 4 months, as it were. What for you have been, I've worked with you for a while. I know you're very passionate, and I can't imagine things getting in your way, right? When you want to achieve something, I know you do everything to achieve it. But what have been the kind of main lessons for you as a startup CEO in the climate space?
Yeah, I mean, so many, right? Where to start from? I think we got really, really going with Carbo Culture in 2018 when we did our pre-seed round in January. And that's kind of like when we bought the first hardware and sort of really got into gear and didn't have anything else on our plates. But it's been like really intense. And I'd say that the first couple of years were intense because the market wasn't ready. And then suddenly everything shifted and people suddenly were sort of hammering down our door to get carbon removal credits. And first it was even just carbon credits. People didn't understand the removal concept. But now that's like super common lingo, and carbon removal people have conferences with hundreds or even thousands of participants. So it's not anymore that everybody can fit into one meeting room. And that's really exciting, and it's great to grow as a leader on that path. And I think founders have an inherent tool of sort of like grit and resilience and sort of that persistence. And now it's time to add more things into the toolkit and sort of like get ready for a bigger team and a bigger leadership team and sort of see other people as well, build the company culture and build the team and what we're going to look like in 5 years from now. So really, really super fun to see these kind of like paths of growth and different periods. And personally, I go along with it as well. So hopefully can learn as much as the organization is and do my part there.
Yeah, great stuff. And so just last question for me, hopes and dreams over the next, where does Carbo go on the next, 5 years?
I mean, hopes and dreams are like, there's like a lot to do, like so much work. And that's the good news now, that kind of like order books are filling and sort of people are hunting us down instead of the other way around. So that's the best problem a company can have, right? But now we need the hands on deck who can deliver at a level of excellency and, target that we need to achieve those things. So I want to think of like an example where something like relatively thought impossible was when Ørsted announced like, hey, we're going to decarbonize our energy mix from 85% fossil to 15 or 85 fossil 15 renewable to the other way around within 30 years. And everybody thought they were mental, but they actually did it in 10 years. And so I want to think that we're at the similar breaking point where that's possible for carbon removal and our type of companies. And now we really need the kind of like visionary leaders who also feel that and can kind of ride the wave and build the company as we're, growing and sort of build the plane while you're flying it. And that's why it's so exciting, but it's also the climate thing is pretty terrifying. The more you look into it, it's kind of like, of course, it's a bigger market for us every day, but really it's not a minute too late to actually do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I mean, that's great. Henrietta, it's been great to have you on today. Thanks for sharing the journey, and we wish you all the very best.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for your help on the journey as well. Thank you.